Hello friends, in this module we can see about heart sounds and dynamic auscultation. Regarding the heart sounds, this diagram we will be seeing in lot of areas, yes, and this describes the various phases of your cardiac cycle. Yes, initially the AV valve closes, yes, then you have the isovolumetric contraction, then the aortic valve opens here, then the ejection phase, then the aortic valve closes, then you have isovolumetric relaxation, then rapid inflow, then diastasis, then the atrial systole. Once again, the same cycle repeats. Yes, and if you notice, the first heart sound occurs because of the closure of the AV valves. Okay, the closure of the AV valves. Okay, whereas the second heart sound occurs because of the closure of the semilunar valves, that is your aortic and pulmonary valves. The extra heart sounds can occur in between the diastole. The one which occurs very closely to the S2 is your S3. Okay, and the one which can occur just before the S1 is your S4. Both are phonocardiogram findings. Sometimes in pathologically you can hear S4. Physiologically as well you can hear S3 in some patients, especially young athletes. Okay, in exercise, in hyperdynamic circulation you can hear S3, but S4 is almost always thought as a pathological fact. First heart sound, that is your S1. So when does it occur? It occurs, the S1 initiates the ventricular systole. Yes, it is because of the sudden closure of mitral and tricuspid valves. Two components, M1, T1, some people will write, but since it is occurring almost always at the same time, it is commonly called as S1 rather than, if you see S2, it will be called as A2P2. Okay, S2 is called as A2P2 because both will have a gap which widens during inspiration and narrows during expiration. That's why it is called as A2P2, whereas S1 is called as S1 only because not in many conditions it can get a split. Frequency, it is a high pitched. Remember, in clinical cardiology, high pitch sounds are always heard with your diaphragm. Remember HD quality, that's mnemonic. High pitch, okay, whatever is high pitch, you'll use a diaphragm of your stethoscope. Okay, and the duration is around 0.15 seconds. So what are the factors which can determine the loudness of S1? Number one is your structural integrity of mitral valve. Yes, if the mitral valve becomes more and more calcific, the intensity decreases. Position of the AV valve at the time of ventricular contraction. Yes, take a patient with tachycardia. Okay, so normally what happens is, this is the atrium, this is the ventricle. Okay, here is a mitral valve. Yes, the valve leaflet will open, blood will enter from the atrium to the ventricle and fill up to here. Okay, and it will close. This produces the normal sound. Whereas in a patient who is having tachycardia, what happens is the diastolic phase usually lasts for around 0.5 seconds, the ventricular diastolic phase. Okay, and this shortens. Okay, as this shortens, the filling only will be up to this area. Okay, so the valve will widely open and produces a loud sound. So the position of the AV valve at the time of ventricular contraction also matters for determining the loudness. Okay, and the integrity of isovolumetric systole. Say for example a patient with a VSD, okay, the blood which is being pushed into the aorta will also escape, some amount of blood will escape into the right ventricle, okay, and that will cause abnormal sound S1. Okay, and the heart rate I discussed already. Okay, in tachycardia you will get a loud S1, that's because the filling is impaired. Alright, and PR interval, short PR interval once again causes tachycardia and loud S1, and myocardial contractility also matters. Okay, in myocardial infarction sometimes, okay, this muffles. Okay, the heart sounds muffled because of the contraction abnormality. Coming to S2. Okay, so S2, we can classify this S2 into normally splitting S2 and then abnormally fixed wide splitting that can happen in ASD. Fixed wide splitting that can happen in ASD. Okay, then expiratory splitting with inspiratory increase. Okay, inspiratory increase, expiratory splitting as well. Okay, that can happen in RBBB, idiopathic dilatation of the pulmonary artery. Okay, reverse splitting can happen in LBBB and aortic stenosis. And closed fixed splitting that can happen in pulmonary hypertension. Remember these facts. Okay, in ASD it is wide and fixed split. Wide fixed split. Okay, and physiological splitting, but wide physiological splitting. Okay, that is A2 is followed by P2 is the normal splitting pattern. Okay, first the aortic valve close, then the pulmonary valve close. Okay, and if this is widened, then you can suspect an RBBB or idiopathic dilatation of pulmonary artery. Whereas reverse splitting can occur, that is your P2A2 can occur in LBBB and aortic stenosis. Closed fixed splitting can occur in pulmonary hypertension. Right, so how to identify reverse splitting? Okay, have you ever heard of split? Yes, it is heard very easily. Okay, and you can make a patient stand. Okay, and ask him to slowly breathe in and slowly breathe out. Okay, it will be well made out in a lean individuals. Okay, you can definitely hear the split. Okay, during inspiration. Normally during inspiration the split is heard. During expiration the split is not heard. Whereas if the split is heard during expiration, okay, or if the split which is heard during expiration and inspiration and expiration, but it widens during expiration, then you can suspect paradoxical splitting. Okay, split present can be normal as well, but a split which widens during expiration, split widens during expiration is almost always paradoxical or reversed splitting. Okay, right. So this is a table from McLeod just to highlight the importance regarding second order sounds. Quiet sounds can happen in low cardiac output, calcific aortic stenosis, aortic regurgitation because the valve is not closing at all. Of course, soft S1. Okay, S1 we discussed previously. Soft S1 can happen in mitral regurgitation because the valve is not able to close at all. Okay, there is no coaptation. That is your closure of the valves. Okay, and loud second order sound, that is loud S2 can happen in systemic hypertension or pulmonary hypertension because of the aortic component and pulmonary component respectively. And split which can widen in inspiration we read already. Yes, RBBB, pulmonary stenosis, pulmonary hypertension and VSD. Fixed splitting can happen in ASD, wide fixed splitting. Yes, and widens in expiration, that is reverse splitting. Remember, widen in expiration. Aortic stenosis, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, LBBB and ventricular pacing. Okay, these are the characteristic points to be remembered about S2. S3. S3 is an added sound. Yes, it is also called as ventricular gallop or protodiastolic gallop, and it occurs shortly after S2. Mechanism of S3 is rapid ventricular filling. Yes, and the most consistent mechanism is sudden limitation in long axis filling. Okay, this is from Harrison's, sudden limitation in long axis filling. All right, then regarding S4. Before going into S4, we can finish the physiological causes and pathological causes of S3 as well. The physiological causes include in children and young adults. Yes, can be heard in females more than 40 years as well. Okay, and pathological causes include ventricular failure. Non-failure causes include hyperdynamic or hyperkinetic circulatory states, AV or semilunar valve regurgitation, systemic AV fistula. S3-like sounds are pericardial knock and tumor plop. Okay, S3 in auscultation can be physiological, but if it is palpated, is abnormal. Okay, that is an added point to you. Regarding S4. S4 is also called as atrial gallop or pre-systolic gallop. What did we see about S3? S3 is also called as ventricular gallop or protodiastolic gallop, whereas S4 is atrial gallop or pre-systolic gallop. It is a low frequency sound just like S3. Okay, and forcible atrial contraction against non-compliant ventricle. Very important. There are three parameters which we will discuss in the subsequent slides. Okay, forcible atrial contraction against non-compliant ventricle is responsible. Augmented atrial contraction is required to produce pre-systolic distension of the ventricle. So that is also another reason. Okay, the atrium acts as a booster pump. Okay, if the ventricle is failing, the atrium will push blood so that the ventricle is being stretched. You know the Starling's law. Yes, as the stretch is increasing, the contraction will increase, right? So this is favored by the atrial booster pump or atrial kick we call. Okay, and it is also a low pitch sound as discussed already, occurs shortly before S1. So if you draw a diagram with S1, S2, S3, S4, we draw like this: S1, then S2, then S3, then S4, then S1. Okay, so S1, S2, then S3, then S4, again S1. So this is the normal sequence of heart sounds. All right. Next, what are the requisites of S4? As I discussed already, there are 3 points which are very, very important for generating S4. One is a healthy atrium and sinus rhythm. So, S4 cannot be heard in a patient with atrial fibrillation. Yes, it is the atrial contraction which produces the S4. Atrial contraction pushing the blood forwards. Okay. Another most important is a non-stenotic AV valve. So, mitral stenosis, this cannot occur. Atrial fibrillation, this cannot occur. Yes. And non-compliant, non-dilated ventricle. So, it can happen in ischemia, infarction, concentric hypertrophy, restrictive myopathy, and acute volume overload. Acute volume overload in states like acute MR. Acute myocardial infarction can cause acute MR. In that case, S4 can be heard, and acute myocardial infarction itself can cause S4 because of a non-compliant, non-dilating ventricle. What are the pathological causes? Yes, LVH itself can cause S4 sometimes. Moderate or severe aortic stenosis leading to LVH, HOCM, RCM, that is a restrictive cardiomyopathy. And RVH causes can cause right-sided S4. Yes, moderate or severe pulmonary stenosis, pulmonary arterial hypertension, restrictive cardiomyopathy. Coronary artery disease or ischemic heart disease, where the atrial booster pump is necessary to assist in relatively stiff ischemic left ventricle to maintain adequate contractile force. As discussed already, this is by the Starling's law. Yes, the atrium is pushing more blood, so the ventricle is stretched and that is generating contraction. Okay, and of course, acute regurgitation lesion like acute MR, which can happen in myocardial infarction, and acute AR, which can happen in aortic dissection. Okay, these are the two conditions where you can get S4 once again. What are the other added sounds? These include systolic sounds like ejection click and non-ejection click or mid-systolic click. Remember one important MCQ, that is your all right-sided sounds increase with inspiration except pulmonary ejection click. Okay, very important MCQ. All right-sided sounds increases with inspiration except your pulmonary ejection click. Okay, and what are other diastolic sounds? Opening snap, pericardial knock, and tumor plop. Okay, which can happen in atrial myxoma. Pericardial knock can happen in constrictive pericarditis. Okay, and this non-ejection click happens in one classical condition called as MVPS, mitral valve prolapse syndrome, which is also called as Barlow syndrome. Okay, or billowing mitral valve syndrome or floppy mitral valve syndrome. There are a lot of other names. Okay, and this non-ejection click or a mid-systolic click classically happens in mitral valve prolapse syndrome. Another important heart sound is your pericardial rub. Okay, it's an added sound which can be heard in abnormal conditions. This rub is heard as a leathery or scratchy 3-component or 2-component sound. And it is what is the significance of this pericardial rub? It is nearly 100% specific for the diagnosis of acute pericarditis. Though sensitivity is not high, because as the fluid accumulates, the pericardial effusion starts appearing, this rub can disappear. But the specificity is very high, approaches almost 100%. And the 3 components are heard during ventricular systole, rapid early diastolic filling, and late presystolic filling after atrial contraction. These are the 3 phases where these 3 components can be heard. Coming to dynamic auscultation. What is the importance of dynamic auscultation? If you are having a murmur, how to increase the intensity? That we can learn with the help of dynamic auscultation. And also there are few conditions which behave exactly opposite to what the conventional happening is. For example, all the right-sided sounds increases with inspiration. That is a conventional fact, yes. And the exception is pulmonary ejection click. Like that, there are certain things. Okay. And with dynamic auscultation, you will alter the murmurs with the help of certain maneuvers, like a Valsalva maneuver or a sustained hand grip. Okay, and what is the change which is happening to the murmur is an important area where MCQs can be asked. Okay, some things are very simple and some things are built in with concepts. Okay, and I'll explain the concepts you can remember forever. So coming to respiratory variation, that is the number 1. Yes. So right-sided murmurs and sounds generally increase with inspiration, except for pulmonary ejection click or pulmonary ejection sound. And left-sided murmurs and sounds are usually louder during expiration. Okay, and coming to number 2, it is the Valsalva maneuver. Most murmurs decrease in length and in intensity, except 2. One is HOCM and another is your MVPS. So what happens in Valsalva maneuver? which causes the increase in the intensity of the HOCM murmur and MVPS murmur. Basically, as you do Valsalva maneuver, the venous return back into the heart is getting affected. So what happens? The LV cavity is receiving less blood, so the cavity decreases in size, and that lead to increase in obstruction and lead to increase in murmur in HOCM. Okay, decreased preload. Yes, that will decreases the LV size, cavity size, and that will lead to increase in obstruction. Okay, and that will increase the murmur. Okay, and in MVPS also the preload is decreased, so there will be early prolapse of the mitral leaflets into the LA. Okay, when the LA is having more pressure, the prolapse will occur later. Whereas here during Valsalva maneuver, the preload is decreased, the venous return is decreased, so the amount of blood which the LA receives is also decreased, and that leads to early prolapse of your mitral valve leaflets in mitral valve prolapse syndrome. After a ventricular premature beat or atrial fibrillation. Okay, and what happens? Murmurs originating at normal or stenotic semilunar valves, that is your aortic and pulmonary valve. Increase in cardiac cycle after a VPB, ventricular premature beat, or in the cycle after a long cycle length in atrial fibrillation. Okay, leave this point after a long cycle length in atrial fibrillation, not needed. Usually what happens is, if you see in ECG, there will be a P, QRS and a T. Okay, this is the normal. Yes, P, QRS and a T. Okay, P is because of the atrial contraction, QRS complex because of your ventricular depolarization, and T because of your ventricular repolarization. And the atrial repolarization will be buried under the QRS complex. Okay, that is doesn't matter. Okay, this is the normal sequence by which the waveforms occur and the sequence by which the atrium contracts. Okay, the SA node initiates the impulses. Okay. Whereas suddenly sometimes in as the age advances, the ventricle itself will produce an impulse in between. Okay, and that will produce a complex with broad QRS and another wave next adjacent to the QRS wave. Okay, the broad QRS complex with the adjacent wave which is exactly opposite to the direction of the QRS complex. Okay, that is called as a ventricular premature beat. Okay, and that happens before the normal QRS. Yes, normal PQRS comes. Okay, suddenly the ventricle prematurely contracts. Okay, and after that there will be a delay in the initiation of the next PQRS cycle. Okay, so that is the reason. What happens is, after the premature ventricular contraction, okay, after the premature ventricular complex, VPC we mentioned, ventricular premature complex or ventricular premature beat, all are same. Okay, what happens is there is increased filling. Okay, increased diastolic filling of the ventricle. Okay, so what happens? All the murmurs originating normal or stenotic semilunar valves will increase in intensity. Okay, whereas systolic murmurs due to AV valve regurgitation do not change, diminish or become shorter. This is an important point to be remembered. Okay, all the murmurs, for example, there is an aortic stenosis in a patient. Okay, and aortic stenosis is producing a murmur. Okay, agreed. Fine. So in that case, if the patient is having a VPC, then there will be a large amount of time for the filling of the ventricle, and more amount of blood will go through this stenosed valve. Okay, already there is a valve is stenosed and the valve is producing a murmur. Yes, but when a patient is having a VPC, then after that VPC, the heart will take some time for recovering to a normal sinus rhythm. Okay, in that gap, lot of blood will go into the ventricle, and lot of blood going through the aortic and pulmonary valve will produce increase in intensity of the murmur. Whereas systolic murmurs due to AV valve regurgitation, that is your mitral regurgitation or tricuspid regurgitation, do not change. Whereas they can diminish or become shorter. Alright. Then positional changes. What happens with standing? With standing, most of the murmurs diminish except HOCM, which becomes louder, and MVPS, which lengthens. Yes, we did see this fact, right? In Valsalva maneuver, what happens with standing? Standing will cause decreased preload. Okay, then everything else is self-explanatory. Yes, decrease in preload, decrease in LV cavity size. Okay, so that can increase the obstruction in HOCM. Yes, since the preload is decreased, there will be early prolapse of the MVP, and that can lengthen the MVP murmur. Alright, and with squatting, most murmurs become louder. because of the increased venous return. Yes, as more blood is passing through a stenosed valve or regurgitant valve, the murmur intensity is going to increase. Yes, but those of HOCM and MVP usually soften or maybe disappearing. Okay, and passive leg raising, once again, passive leg raising is increasing preload. Alright, next, exercise. What happens to the murmurs during exercise? Murmurs due to blood flow across normal or obstructed valves, example pulmonary stenosis or mitral stenosis, becomes louder with both isotonic and isometric exercise, right? Because increasing blood flow, so increase in intensity of the murmur. Okay, whereas murmurs of MR, VSD and AR also increases with hand grip. Okay, right. But remember, this is not tricuspid regurgitation murmur. Okay, usually MR, TR and VSD, differential diagnosis for pansystolic murmur. Pansystolic murmur. The differential diagnoses are MR, TR and VSD. Whereas here with hand grip exercise, it is the MR, AR and VSD murmurs which increase in intensity. But the HOCM murmur often decreases with maximum hand grip exercise. That is because if you increase the afterload, okay, if you increase the afterload, what happens to the LV cavity size? Once again, it increases the LV cavity size. Okay, so what happens? There will be decreased obstruction. Remember, in HOCM, there are two things which are contraindicated. Okay, what are they? Number one, vasodilators. Number two, decrease in preload causing drugs. Why? Because both these drugs will decrease the cavity size, increase the level of obstruction. Okay, and this sustained hand grip will cause an increase in preload, increase in afterload, that will lead to increase in cavity size and decrease in level of obstruction. Okay, and remember, left-sided S3 and S4 sounds are also accentuated by exercise. Okay, these are the classical points to be understood under dynamic auscultation. It helps very well during your clinical postings in medicine, yes, to identify various murmurs. And of course, it is an important area where MCQs are being framed, little bit high level MCQs are being framed. Here ends the topic. Thank you.